My name is Mark Dubner. I'm a practicing attorney in Dallas, Texas, and one of the most frequent concerns I hear from my business clients arises from FACTA. FACTA is a federal law that was implemented to make companies safeguard personal identifying information. This law is intended to prohibit the growth of the identity theft problem. To help us all better understand FACTA and the significant problem we still have with identity theft, I've asked former Judge Royce McCoy to address FACTA and identity theft in the business environment today. Judge McCoy is a retired county judge and is certified through the Institute of Fraud Risk Management as an identity theft risk management specialist. He's lectured across the nation to trade associations, law enforcement agencies, chambers of commerce, service organizations, government agencies, and large employer groups regarding identity theft and how these new federal laws affect all employers nationwide. Additionally, he's been a guest speaker on multiple radio stations nationwide discussing these same topics. Judge McCoy, we're happy to have you here.
Thanks, Mark. I'm glad to be here.
Judge, would you please give us a general understanding of FACTA?
Well, FACTA is an acronym for the Fair and Accurate Credit Transaction Act. This law was signed by President Bush on December 4th, 2003. The provisions of the law have been phased in over the last few years, and they're now all in effect. However, initially, legal analysts believed that FACTA applied only to banking and financial-related industries. However, because it's basically impossible to be an employer in the 21st century without collecting, disseminating, maintaining, and destroying personal information, the current consensus is that if you have even one worker, maybe it's a yard man or a nanny, and you obtain their personal information, FACTA dictates that you must not only safeguard that information while it's in your possession, but you must also destroy the information before disposing of it.
Well, Judge, are all businesses subject to FACTA?
Mark, the law applies to any business, regardless of size, that collects personal information or uses consumer reports like a credit report or a criminal background check about customers or employees to make decisions within their business. And that personally identifiable information could include their name, social security numbers, driver's license numbers, banking information, date of birth, credit card numbers, and more. And no employer group was exempted from FACTA.
Well, tell us which government agency is charged with the responsibility to oversee FACTA compliance.
Well, FACTA is enforced by the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC. It often seems that there isn't a week that goes by that we don't learn that hackers have managed to breach corporate, government, or even university databases in a major way. Entities ranging from the Department of Veterans Administration, Countrywide Mortgage, DSW Shoes, TJ Maxx and Marshalls, and even the University of Texas Business School have all been victims. And you can find this information and more on the FTC website.
Judge, if personally identifying information of employees or customers, students or patients is hacked, lost, or stolen, would you tell us what the penalties are to the organization for not safeguarding that information?
Well, if data aiding identity theft originates from a security breach at your company, you, the employer, could be sued, fined, or become a defendant in a class action lawsuit by affected employees or customers whose personal information somehow has gotten out. And FACTA provides penalties, including civil liability. An employee could be entitled to recover actual damages sustained if their identity is stolen from an employer. Or the employer could be liable for statutory damages for up to $1,000 per employee. The class action lawsuits are the big area you need to be concerned about, the plaintiff's attorneys. If a large number of employees are impacted, they may be able to bring class action suits and obtain punitive damages from the employer. And additionally, employers need to be aware that there are no statutory limitations for filing these class action lawsuits. And last but not least, the federal government could fine a covered business up to $2,500 for each violation, and the state can add another $1,000 to that total.
Judge, in addition to complying with FACTA, we now are hearing about red flag rules in reference to FACTA. Would you address how businesses should be aware of certain additional requirements under these red flag rules?
Well, the red flag rules went into effect January 1st, 2008 as an amendment to FACTA. These additional requirements affect financial institutions and creditors with covered accounts.
Judge, in my practice, I know business people interpret terms like creditor very strictly. They might believe that FACTA and red flags apply only to a few companies. Is that correct?
Well, first let me give you the definition of creditor. A creditor is any entity that regularly extends, renews, or continues credit. And if a company or entity defers payments for goods or services and have an accounts receivable department, they too are considered creditors. A covered account is also an account for which there's a foreseeable risk for identity theft. For example, a small business owner or sole proprietorship. Now, recently the FTC has extended the deadline for enforcing these new laws to June 1st, 2010.
Judge, I know that the FTC has granted several enforcement extensions. Would you explain what is the difference between extending enforcement and the law being in effect?
That's a good question. Organizations have been liable for the loss of personally identifiable information since the law went into effect. The act of enforcement by the FTC is the only piece that's been extended, and that's, again, June 1st, 2010. If you review the language in the recent extension, you may presume this will be the last deadline extension, Mark. The FTC also makes the point, and this is what we're striving to do, that is to make companies aware that they understand how FACTA and the red flag rules affect their organizations.
How does a company even begin to comply with FACTA and, if required, the red flag rules?
Well, every company must take reasonable steps to do certain things. They must have a written identity theft prevention program. They must have employees effectively trained on detection, prevention, and response to identity theft. And every principal should expect to make an investment in their employees. That investment includes making sure you train your compliance officer to deal with data breach.
Judge, what solutions do we provide?
Well, again, Mark, we'll train the employees. We'll help draft a personalized privacy policy, and we'll help assist the compliance officer in that training aspect to oversee the program.
Judge McCoy, we really appreciate you sharing your expertise with us.
Thanks for having me here today.
Thank you for coming. We know FACTA applies to all business organizations. You, the business principal, must take the next step. Leave your contact information to schedule an appointment or to discuss how to start the compliance process.